So your President Jair Bolsonaro recently paid his first state visit to China. He says Brazil hopes to develop a sound and diversified relations with China. How would you assess the progress the two have made in bilateral trade?
Looking back on the 45 years of diplomatic relations between Brazil and China, I think that we can be proud of what we have achieved. We started from a very low base, and even as recently as 20 years ago, trade between Brazil and China was only $3 billion a year. Now it's more than 100 billion, so we've multiplied by 30 the volume of trade in the last 20 years. Investment started from a very low base, and 6 or 7 years ago we started to pick up, and now we have a stock of Chinese investment in Brazil that is over $70 billion. Overall, I think that we are satisfied at what has been done, and we think we have a good basis for further work.
Looking ahead, in what areas could the two countries deepen their exchange and cooperation? Some point to digital economy as well as biotechnology innovation.
These are two very important areas in which we have already signed a number of agreements. There is much to do. Obviously, the digital economy is one of the most dynamic areas. Both countries have achieved significant progress in this area. China, of course, is a leader in digital payments. It's an area where we need more cooperation between governments to establish regulations to deal with antitrust, with fraud, consumer protection, and also tapping all the opportunities that exist.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said in September that he thinks BRICS has served as both a stabilizer amid international turbulence as well as an example of a new type of international relations. From your perspective, why is BRICS cooperation so important?
BRICS gathers a small number of very important countries, which together comprise a large share of human population, almost half the population of the world, and some very large economies, of course China being the largest of them all. These are countries that face a number of challenges, that also have much to offer, not only to each other, but to the international community in terms of principles for how you work together, and also in terms of generating market opportunities and coming up with ideas for economic growth and social stability.
Well, obviously one of the major challenges facing BRICS nations is slowing economies. What do you think the BRICS group could do to fend off the risk and persevere through the challenge in times of difficulty?
There is, of course, still much potential for increase in trade and diversification of trade between these countries. Given the size of the BRICS, any additional growth is already a contribution to world growth. But also the attachment to the principles and the rules of multilateral trade is also an additional contribution that the BRICS countries provide to the world system. And I think that also working together to try to devise ways for the multilateral institutions to be revitalized.
So you mean countries need to work together as opposed to build walls around each other?
Absolutely, and without trying to impose or constrain their views on any other country. We have to admit that there are differences and find solutions that work for all countries. And I think that what the BRICS have achieved in these 10 years is a demonstration that it can be done even between countries that are so different from each other. If you are willing to do it, and if you want to build something, if you want to work on the basis of cooperation, it can be achieved.